Okay, we'll start with this. A second look at the confrontation between Claressa Shields and Alicia Baumgartner at this weekend's MVP MMA show. A stout observation from Mr. Moonshine, who said, Claressa Shields allegedly slapped Alicia Baumgartner during the Netflix MVP event after party. Shields skipped Win and Salita's May 9th event, but showed up at MVP's Netflix event, which featured the comeback of Ronda Rousey. After declining MVP contracts months ago, fans are calling it a desperate move for promo and clout.
I feel so inclined to agree.
Claressa Shields has been taking shots at MVP as a company and its co-founder Jake Paul for the better portion of the last 5 or 6 years, yet she goes out of her way to attend more of their events than her own promoters. Dimitri Salita does shows on the DAZN platform all the time, and you rarely see Claressa in attendance to support those shows and support her Salita Promotions stablemates. It really does feel like she's relying on MVP for promotion, even though she had the chance to sign to them.
Because you're gonna get seen by more people at an MVP show than you would a Salita show. Though if she had the chance to sign to them, why didn't she?
Pride. Her own pride would never let her bend the knee to Jake Paul and Amanda Serrano, both of which she's openly taken shots at. If you sign to MVP, that's basically what you're doing, and you can't fudge the numbers once they know what they are. You can no longer exaggerate about your gate receipts and what your marquee value really is when they're the ones cutting the checks and they know what the numbers are.
And that was yet another accurate forecast from yours truly, because I told you guys a long time ago, at some point, MVP is going to try to bring her over, but her pride won't let her do it.
So she didn't, but she is still seemingly relying on MVP for promotion because, as stated, she goes out of her way to go to more MVP shows than Salita Promotions shows.
She doesn't get along with most of the MVP stable or both MVP co-founders. So why does she do that? Promotion.
Just to get into it with Alicia Baumgartner, who I think she's quite jealous of.
Alicia is by and large a more attractive woman than Claressa, and that brings out Claressa's insecurities. At its base, that's what I think is going on to that. A Twitter user who goes by the name The Divine Hook said, "What's funny to me is how people talk down Claressa versus Alicia because of looks. Can we keep it boxing?"
Well, if people think that Claressa Shields is jealous of Alicia Baumgartner's aesthetic, there's only so many ways you can say that and get it across.
The Divine Hook continued, "When the fuck do we do that with the male boxers? Y'all don't care about women's sports."
Speak for yourself, sweet cheeks. I've been covering women's boxing since before you had a YouTube channel, when you were still studying for your state exams in grade school. The fact of the matter is, there are a lot of people that are of the opinion Claressa's jealous of Alicia, and it has everything to do with her aesthetic. There's only so many ways you can say that. Common theme in day-to-day life. The beauty standards of one woman bringing out the insecurities of another, as the old saying goes. Nobody hates women more than other women. But the Divine Hook continued, like, why are we not discussing who's got the better skills when it comes to boxing? This is not a beauty pageant we're watching on MVP or Salita Promotions. I guess Divine Hook wants to fancy herself a purist. If so, then what you should be asking is, why is a heavyweight trying to run down on a super feather? If you don't want to focus on the other stuff, why don't you focus on that?
You don't think it's a bit silly for somebody as big as Claressa to be trying to run down on a 130-pound fighter?
I'd wager that this Divine Hook girl is another one of these Sean Zettel types, trying to get invited to the proverbial cookout, and whoever acts more ghetto, whoever acts more ratchet, is who she's gonna side with, who she likes the most, because that's what she hopes to emulate.
Stereotypes.
Negative ones, like being loud and obnoxious, being a ratchet in public spaces.
All the shit you see Claressa do.
Yeah, these Divine Hook types would have you believe that they are allies to the community when all they help to do is give it a bad image.
Look at the bullshit you get behind. The bullshit you support.
Claressa Shields presents as a clown for that reason. There is a growing market in the YouTube boxing community for anybody who's willing to address that.
And outside of it, I've seen a good number of very big content creators that don't normally cover boxing cover Claressa because people can't take it anymore. She is insufferable. It's not that Alicia Baumgartner's perfect,
But she would appear as such next to Claressa. When there's no fight date, no fight news, and there isn't a whole lot going on, you can rely on Claressa to stir up controversy herself. In this instance, attending an MVP show where she's not there to support anybody. She's not even on good terms with the co-founders.
She just wants to be seen. In that way, she is relying on MVP for promotion, even though she's the one turned him down.
It's a very naive perspective from this Divine Hook girl who says that it's not a beauty pageant when not very much is. Boxing is a popularity contest. It always has been. For the men, for the women.
Whatever gets you there. In this instance, one fighter being noticeably more attractive than the other, and how that brings out the other fighter's jealousy.
Insecurities. The content creators that recorded the footage labeled it as a slap, but there were already security guards in between Claressa and Alicia to where I don't think it was a slap in the face, maybe a slap on the hand.
It sounded like one.
But Claressa wasn't actually close enough to Alicia to lay a hand on her face. But you can't let a little thing like the truth get in the way of sensationalist headlines in the business of content creation and clickbait.
Mr. Moonshine calls it clout chasing. I feel so inclined to agree, because by all rights, Claressa shouldn't have even been there. You've been taking shots at MVP from the moment they formed it. Yet you go out of your way to be at the majority of their shows. And it's because you get seen more on their shows than you do on your own, than you do at Salida.
You're a clout chaser. Then super middleweight news, a second look at the upcoming Canelo Alvarez versus Christian Mbilli WBC title fight, a chance for Canelo Alvarez to become a two-time super middleweight champion, provided that he's still got it. Canelo Alvarez will return to the ring September 12th in Riyadh to face WBC super middleweight champion Christian Mbilli. His Excellency, Turki Al-Sheikh announced from London on Saturday, the bout will mark 1 year since Alvarez faced Terence Crawford in Las Vegas. According to figures released by the promotion, that event drew more than 41 million viewers on Netflix, making it one of the most watched boxing broadcasts on record.
And the story is that now Netflix, very content with those figures, is set to be bringing Canelo back to their platform.
Alvarez, the former undisputed super middleweight champion, returns to Saudi Arabia with the WBC title in his sights. The Mexican made 9 successful defenses during a reign at the top of the division that lasted nearly 5 years before losing the undisputed crown to Terence Crawford last September.
And as you can imagine, the WBC was none too pleased with that, because they don't get the sanctioning fees for Crawford that they get for Canelo. And of course, there is nationalism, that they would prefer a Mexican national be holding their title than an American.
So it comes as a surprise to no one that this is the first title that Canelo Alvarez will be fighting for now that he's on the bounce. The WBC made sure they kept the lane open for Canelo to occupy it. Mbilli enters the contest as the reigning WBC champion. The French-Cameroonian fighter, who is based in Montreal, claimed the interim title with a win over Maciej Suliecki in June and was upgraded to full champion in January. He remains undefeated and previously featured on the Alvarez vs. Crawford undercard during Riyadh season. My last fight was fight of the year, Mbilli said in a statement released by the promotion in September. Against Canelo, it will be fight of the decade, and when the fight is over, the world will witness a historic win for me. Alvarez, who turns 36 in July, addressed the announcement in a statement. After so many years in this sport, my motivation is still the same, to challenge myself, represent Mexico, and continue building my legacy, even though people act like he doesn't have one.
Those in the minority.
Mbilli is undefeated and a great fighter, and I respect that, but my focus is always on my preparation, performance, and giving the fans another great night of boxing. On September 12th in Riyadh, we begin a new chapter with the same discipline, ambition, and vision that has carried me throughout my career.
And what promises to be a great fight, much better than the William Skull fight, because William Skull was a pure boxer, a stick-and-move outside fighter, a scared fighter, whereas Christian Mbilli is the polar opposite. He's a come-forward pressure guy who's going to bear down on you, press the envelope, push the issue. If Canelo Alvarez still has it, he better bring it in September.
A press conference has been scheduled for this Saturday in Cairo. It will be the first face-off between the two fighters. The card continues the Riyadh season boxing programming overseen by Al-Sheikh, whose slate of Saudi-backed events has reshaped the sports marquee calendar over the last 2 years. Riyadh season organizers reported more than 17 million visitors across the 2025 edition, following a 2024 run that surpassed 20 million.
Now, there has been a push in some quarters, small ones, to poo-poo on this fight. The usual suspects, Team Benavidez, asking who the hell wants to see this? Who's Christian Mbilli? Christian Mbilli is the guy you called a beast.
Remember that?
Christian Mbilli is the guy who, year and a half, 2 years ago, you said you would like to fight. That's who Christian Mbilli is, so you can't all of a sudden act like you don't know who he is. And let's not kid ourselves. Canelo Alvarez's fight with Christian Mbilli is going to get seen by more people than David's fight with Zerto.
It's going to generate more interest and intrigue from boxing fans all around the world because they want to know if Canelo Alvarez still has it. Losing to Terence Crawford, he didn't look his best, but it's hard to with a fighter like Terence Crawford.
A generational talent.
Multifaceted and able to do a lot of things, whereas Christian, though bigger and younger, is a lot more simple, and he presents a style that historically Canelo does well against. He usually does well against pressure fighters. So if he still has it, he should be able to win this fight.
And if he doesn't, he will be overwhelmed by the persistent pressure of a bigger, younger man.
If an aging Canelo Alvarez cannot catch and counter to the same degree that he used to, if he can't keep the counters coming, land hard to get Christian Mbilli's respect, maybe knock him down and keep him down, could be a long night in September. That is the stylistic advantage that boxer punchers like Canelo have over pressure fighters like Christian. And don't confuse Canelo with a pressure guy,
Because he's not.
he can mimic that style because he has to as a super middleweight where almost everybody's bigger than he is. He has no choice but to close the distance, barreling forward, catching and countering out of the high guard because many of the super middleweights are noticeably taller and longer than he is. So he can mimic a pressure fighting style, but he's not a pressure fighter by trade. He's actually a boxer puncher. With Christian, he won't have to close the distance. He won't have to go looking for the guy like he did with Jermell Charlo and
William Skull, Caleb Plant, those guys who tried to stick and move and stay on the outside of Canelo. Christian ain't gonna do that.
irrespective of who wins, this promises to be a much more fan-friendly fight than those fights were, because Christian comes to fight. He doesn't come to stick and move. He doesn't come to dance.
Comes the rumble.
What has often been referred to as an Achilles heel for Canelo Alvarez, those fighters who want to stay on the outside of him, moving lateral, Christian isn't going to do that. So if you've still got it, and there's any semblance of the fighter that you used to be, you better show it in September.
The night of the fight, Canelo Alvarez will have had a whole year to recover and regroup, rebound.
Rest. And if that's still not enough time for you to get it together and beat a guy like this, unfortunately, it's because you ain't got it no more. That's what sells this fight. Finding out, does Canelo Alvarez still have it? Can he still beat a guy like this, or has Father Time finally caught up to him?
Questions that need answers. Will Canelo Alvarez win in September? And if he does and becomes a two-time super middleweight champion, what is he going to do after that? Who is he going to fight?
It's a little hard to imagine that going belt hunting has the same lure that it used to for Canelo Alvarez when he's already been there and done that in 4 weight classes. Though if he does insist on fighting on after the Mbilli fight, if he wins, one guy I can think of he might encounter afterwards is Hamza Sheeraz, who must now get past Begic this weekend.
First on the ring's Glory and Giza card at the Pyramids in Egypt, May 23rd, live on DAZN, the vacant WBO super middleweight title will be on the line. After that, Lee believes Hamza Sheeraz has the potential to go on and achieve undisputed honors at super middle. He's ready for them all, Lee told The Ring. All goes to plan, he'll be the unified, undisputed champion in the next year or two. He has to win the Begic fight. I'm not looking past anything or taking anything for granted. It's a big opportunity for Alem to make his name. We have to make sure that Hamza is on top of everything. At the peak of his powers, he's improving every day. I'm excited for him, and I'm looking forward to the experience of being in Egypt. I've always been fascinated by the pyramids. It's going to be a fantastic setting, but first and foremost, It's boxing.
They're talking about unification matches, and they're talking about undisputed. Currently, there are at least 2 other champions out there now holding belts, not counting the one fighting Canelo in September. There is Ozlisi Iglesias, who's got the IBF. Bit of a hot potato.
High risk, low reward kind of guy, but he is a champion. There is also newly minted WBA champion Jaime Munguia.
Bit more well-known, and in my opinion, a bit more beatable perhaps than Ozlisi Iglesias. It's not often that Jaime Munguia is dwarfed by a fighter in the ring, but if he were to fight Hamza Sheeraz, that would be the case. Hamza would tower over him. Hamza, who hasn't fought since dispatching Edgar Berlanga inside of 5 rounds in the main event of Ring 3 last summer. But should he beat Begic, big things await, including a potential fight with Canelo, who has his own fish to fry in Christian Mbilli in September. Lee doesn't believe the pressure of having to deliver against any opponent many believe to be overmatched will make any difference to Sheeraz's performance. I think Hamza has the experience. The former middleweight champion added, he's such a determined, mentally strong person. I don't care if it was Canelo or Begic. I think he's preparing the exact same way. We'll have the same mindset.
I think he's going to win on Saturday. I think Hamza will become WBO super middleweight champion. The question is, what does he do after that?
When does he do it is the better question, because he hasn't fought since the summer of last year, and there was plenty of time left after that Edgar Berlanga fight to get him another one, and they didn't. And now he's fighting at the beginning of this summer.
You'd think they're playing it safe.
There have been 1 or 2 snafus. An ordered fight with Diego Pacheco. That didn't materialize. No fault of Hamza's, because it was Diego that pulled out. But I do get the impression that if they win that brown belt on Saturday, they're gonna tread carefully. Of course, they could look to unify with another champion before the year is out.
But they're gonna be selective.
Because once they get that brown belt, they're going to see out the situation involving Canelo to see if he can get a belt, then fighting him will become the priority.
Even if that means sitting out?
That's the question. Hamza is fighting just before summer begins, while Canelo is fighting just as summer ends. That doesn't leave enough time in the calendar year for Hamza to fight him. Maybe he can fight somebody else, like a Jaime Munguia.
I could see that happening, but I don't imagine he fights the Cuban. I don't see that.
So let's imagine that Hamza goes in there on Saturday, blasts this guy out of there in the early goings of the fight with little resistance. He might make it to a September showdown with Jaime Munguia on the undercard of Canelo versus Mbilli.
Now, that would require Jaime to take the fight with Hamza. Not sure if he'd do that.
But that is one way it could break down for Hamza. Begic this weekend, Munguia in September, then Canelo in May of the following year. We'll see.